If you walked through the date palm groves of Arabia in the early 7th century, you might notice a man trapped in forced labor. Stripped of his autonomy, his days consisted of tending to trees under a scorching sun. But the hands working that rough bark were not meant for manual labor. This man was born into wealth, the son of a respected Persian nobleman, raised with the privileges of a powerful empire. He was not a prisoner of war, nor had his homeland been conquered. The chains binding him to this oasis were the consequence of his own choices, a voluntary search for spiritual clarity. We usually think of a pursuit of truth as a path to liberation, yet for this man, a desire to understand the nature of reality led him into the constraints of slavery. In his youth, his primary responsibility was an honorable one. He was tasked with guarding the sacred fire of his family's faith in Persia, ensuring the flames never extinguished. Day after day, he fed the embers. That tending to those flames provided no answers to his questions about existence. He felt an emptiness, a certainty that there was more to the universe than the rituals he had inherited. That inner quiet was broken the day he passed by a Christian church. The worship he witnessed struck him as a truth far removed from the fires of his home. When he shared this, his father confined him, locking him inside their estate to prevent him from abandoning their religion. Confinement could not hold him. He escaped, leaving his family, his inheritance, and his homeland behind. He chose a life of exile, severing his ties to comfort to follow the truth he had glimpsed. He traveled to Syria, where he attached himself to a series of righteous, ascetic scholars. He served them, lived simply, and studied their theology. This map traces his movement across the region. Originating in Persia, he spent years moving from one teacher to the next. Whenever a mentor reached the end of his life, he would direct Salman to another scholar in a different city. He was accumulating knowledge, but the clarity he sought remained fragmented. He had traveled the length of the region and sat with its greatest minds, yet the path ahead was now obscured. Salman had reached the limits of what he could achieve through his own will. Every door he had opened himself led only to another question, leaving him waiting for a direction he could not yet see. His final teacher in Syria made a striking admission as he lay dying. He confessed that he knew of no one alive who held the full truth, but he shared that a new prophet would soon appear in the land of Arabia. To identify this prophet, the teacher described 3 specific signs. First, he will not eat from charity. Second, he will accept and share gifts. And third, he will bear a physical seal of prophethood between his shoulders. The teacher's instruction was specific. Salman was to travel to a land of black volcanic rocks and date palm trees, the place where this prophet would eventually migrate. After decades of wandering, Salman's search had changed. He was no longer looking for a teacher to follow, but for a man who matched these 3 distinct descriptions. He hired a group of travelers to guide him to Arabia, but in the open desert, they betrayed him. They captured him and sold him into slavery to a local merchant. Traded from one owner to another, he was taken deep into the interior of the peninsula until he arrived in the city of Madinah. He had been dragged across the desert against his will, arriving exactly where his teacher had described. The man who had spent his life steering his own destiny was now powerless. His days of study were replaced by the physical toll of manual labor in the date groves. But look at the geography. As a lone foreign traveler, he likely would not have survived the journey through the desert alone. The betrayal that took his freedom was the same force that delivered him safely to the prophet's destination. When news reached him that a man claiming to be a prophet had arrived in Medina, Salman took what little food he had saved to find him. He was ready to see if the signs he had carried in his mind for years would finally appear. Salman presented the food as charity. He watched as the Prophet Muhammad distributed it to his companions, but refused to eat any of it himself. The first sign was confirmed. Later, Salman returned and offered food as a gift. This time, the Prophet accepted the offering and ate alongside them. 2 signs had now matched. Only the final mark remained. Salman managed to move behind the Prophet during a gathering, and when the garment shifted, he saw the seal for himself, exactly as it had been described in Syria. At that moment, the weight of his decades-long search finally lifted. Salman fell to the ground, weeping, as he realized that every sacrifice and every hardship had led him to this single point of certainty. After accepting Islam, the Muslim community helped Salman purchase his freedom. He transitioned from an enslaved foreigner to a respected member of the Prophet's inner circle. His background in Persia soon changed the course of history. When Medina was threatened by a massive army, Salman suggested digging a defensive trench, a strategy unknown to the Arabs that prevented the city from being overrun. His story illustrates the relationship between human effort and fate. Sincere action is required from the individual, but the final arrival is often facilitated by forces beyond our control. What appears to be a cruel obstacle, like enslavement, can be the hidden architecture of destiny, guiding a person precisely where they were meant to be.